Good morning, everybody. It is Steve Lookner with Agenda Free TV. I know I was saying we were going to finish up our coverage so I could get some rest, but President Trump is going to be giving a press briefing shortly on the plane crash incident. So I figured we would cover it here first before I do that, and that is supposed to start at 11 a.m. Eastern time, which is just 17 minutes from now. Now, I don't know if it's going to start right on time, but figure we'll cover that, and we'll take some of your comments on the air, and then I will rest. So hopefully I'll have a little video even before it starts of the scene, maybe. I'm checking it here. I'm keeping my eyes out. And you can see there's the scene right there from right near Reagan National Airport, where an American Airlines flight hit and collided with an Army helicopter, and all 67 people, 64 on the plane, 3 in the helicopter, are presumed dead. So we're going to bring you live coverage of this. I really appreciate you joining, and thanks to our moderators. Carms, Roberts May Queen is there moderating. Thank you. Over there, Linda Belk and Larry on X are there, or are there on X. Thanks also to our Twitch and our Facebook moderators as well. We have on Twitch, Big Ball of Yarn, LB Prairie Dawn, I Got That Fire, Papa Bear, and Surly Dev. And thanks also to our Facebook moderators. This is supposed to start in 15 minutes. Okay. And thanks to you for joining the broadcast. Let me just see something here. Okay. Yeah, I'm not covering the confirmation hearings. We just don't have time to do it today. But I do appreciate you joining. And normally we would have covered the Kash Patel and Tulsi Gabbard hearings, but just not going to have the time today to do that. I'm not going to. I'm going to assume there's some familiarity with what happened here, and kind of just jump in. Thank you to Cessis, by the way. Thank you, Cessis. Something about this whole, it's just such a, it's just a huge tragedy. And also, it's just very, very strange how this happened. Let me pull up here real quick the ADSB exchange diagram right here. Hang on, I'm pulling it up right here. So this is from ADSB Exchange, which is a flight tracking website. And so the thing to look at is here's on the what you have is on the bottom, that's the plane right there. And on the top, that's the helicopter. And the plane is coming in to land on this runway. And from everything I've heard, the plane was just doing normally what it would be doing. That is what the American Airlines CEO said. I was able to quickly watch Blanco Lirio. He did an intro video on this. I'm sure he'll do more coverage of this on YouTube. And he said, if I remember right, that it looked like it was just doing what it normally would do coming in here. So I've seen nothing to suggest that the plane was doing anything besides what it would normally do coming in for a landing at this runway, where it almost made it. And it's just really odd. I don't have the exact full transcript of the air traffic audio and all the timings and stuff, but from what I can gather from the different clips I've heard and what I've seen reported, basically shortly before this helicopter collided with the plane, this helicopter, air traffic control said to the helicopter, can you see the CRJ? Can you see the plane? And the helicopter said yes. The helicopter said they could see the plane. And then the air traffic control said, "We'll go behind the plane." I mean, it's common, I guess, for helicopters to cross over the river here, where the planes are crossing this way, as strange as that might seem. But then, very shortly after that, I mean, I don't have the exact timing here. So I've listened to a couple clips, which makes it sound like it's like maybe 10 or 15 seconds later, but I don't want to be wedded to those timings. But from what I understand, it wasn't that long after the helicopter said, yes, we see the plane, basically, that they collided with the plane. So how could that happen? How could it happen that... And they actually said, the helicopter actually said, when they were asked if they could see the plane, they said yes, and then they asked for visual separation. Which is, I'm just getting you a definition of this. ChatGPT says it means when a plane requests visual separation, it means the pilot is taking responsibility for maintaining a safe distance from other aircraft using visual cues rather than air traffic control. So basically, the plane is saying, so they say to the helicopter, "Can you see the plane?" And the helicopter says yes, requesting visual separation. That means the helicopter feels that they're seeing the plane well enough that they can just keep their distance from it just using their eyesight. They don't need the ATC help in some way. And then somehow it collides with the plane. So how did that happen? How does it happen that shortly before the crash, they say they can see the plane? They say they can see it well enough that they request visual separation, and then they collide with the plane. We don't know. But that's where it happened right there. And you can go back on, if you go back on ADSB Exchange here, you can see, they're coming in. And eventually they met around there. Now, one of our viewers says they're looking at another plane. Some of our viewers have suggested maybe they were looking at the wrong plane. I don't know. They were supposed to go behind the plane, from what I understand. That means the plane would go by, and then the helicopter would go across behind it. So I don't know what happened again, but it's just... This was. I want to say from the audio I've heard and what I've read, we're not talking about minutes. We're talking about a question of seconds. I don't know if it's like 15 seconds or something, but we're not talking about minutes. We're talking about not that long in terms of seconds before the actual collision. The plane said, yeah, we see, basically they said, the helicopter said, we see the plane. Oh, hold on a second here. I have video for you. I have video of the press briefing. Here we go. It's not started yet, but I have video. There it is. Look, this is the White House. Hang on, let me change this. Anyway, so I am not an aviation expert, and I don't pretend to be. But it's just such a confusing situation. One Purple Queen said 13 seconds. Yeah, I mean, the video, I listened to an audio track which seemed to suggest it happened about 15 seconds, that about 15 seconds before the crash, they were saying, we see the plane. So did they actually not see the plane? Were they looking at something else? Did they see the plane, but something went wrong with how they were maneuvering? What can I say? I have no idea. But we're going to see Trump. It's called a press briefing on the plane crash. One of our viewers, Ayusaki, thinks they misjudged. Tony thinks they saw the wrong plane. Brooks says misjudged distance. But, you know, it's not like we have no evidence that anyone was reporting any mechanical errors so far. Just up until very close to when it happened. Oh, let me turn the audio on. Audio. Where's the audio? Why am I not hearing audio? Oh, they probably don't have the audio on. That's probably... I bet Reuters has not turned the audio on this camera. That'd be my guess. On the left is Peter Alexander from NBC. But I will defer to the experts on what went wrong. I'm not going to be able to figure out myself. And let me just do one other thing real quick, just as a little backup here. Throw this down here, just as a backup. I actually think I might want to use the White House feed when they actually start, because with the White House feed, you can usually see the questioners better. So let me just get all this scheduled here. Oh, all right, well, they're not live yet. And I have not gone through all of the air traffic audio and stuff like that. So I'm not claiming to have full information and everything. And there's plenty of experts out there, and like people like Blanco Lirio and other really good aviation YouTube channels you can check out for that stuff. By the way, thanks to Marnie and Sneezing Eagle and Cat Tackling over there on YouTube. We are waiting for the Trump press briefing on this. Now, Trump said, he posted that he has been briefed on this. You know, we haven't had an NTSB briefing yet on this, but is it possible that Trump could maybe come out and say stuff that he's been told about what happened that we haven't heard yet? I wouldn't be shocked if he did that. He might say, I'm being told it was this. Spyman says Juan Brown is the best there is. Yeah, that's the Blanco Lirio channel on YouTube. It's a very good channel. Blanco Lirio. BLANCO LIRIO. Ashley says NTSB is who I want to hear from. I don't believe they have said yet. I haven't checked. I got to check. And last I checked, they hadn't said when they're going to do their briefing. But we will watch Trump's briefing. Yeah, NTSB has not announced a briefing yet. So I'm just doing a quick check here to see if I have any other updates. Elena Treed says Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, has just arrived at the White House. He was seen going into the West Wing ahead of the president's briefing. Will Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, Remember, this was an Army helicopter that collided with the plane. Will Pete Hegseth be at this briefing? That I do not know. Oh, yeah, one of our viewers mentioned this. Pete Hegseth, did he actually post this? I might have missed this while I was in between streams. Oh, Pete Hegseth posted this, guys. Hang on, let's watch what Pete Hegseth had to say about this while we're waiting for Trump. I didn't even see this yet. I'm sure a bunch of you guys have. Hold on, we have audio. So sorry if you're seeing this for a repeated time, but I haven't even seen it. Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense.
All right, update this morning. Just got off the phone with the Southcom commander and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs talking about our efforts at Guantanamo Bay. That is ongoing. We're leaning forward on supporting the president's directive to make sure that we have a location for violent criminal illegals as they are deported out of the country. No one's going to wait on the Defense Department, and we're working that in real time. But I also wanted to give an update on the tragedy that happened last night here in Washington, D.C. and provide a little bit more information as we are actively working to investigate and understand what occurred and why. At about 8:48 last night, a UH-60 assigned to the U.S. Army Aviation Brigade in the Military District of Washington, Fort Belvoir, Virginia, collided tragically with a civilian airliner. The unit involved, the Army unit involved, was Bravo Company 12th Aviation Battalion at Fort Belvoir. It was an annual proficiency training flight. And when we look at the crew, and not all kin have been notified, so we're going to withhold ranks and names at this point. We do know on our side who was involved. It was a fairly experienced crew, and that was doing a required annual night evaluation. They did have night vision goggles. The 12th Aviation Battalion, as of now, is granted a 48-hour operational pause on contingency missions as what happened is reviewed, and a senior-level aviation team, an investigative team from our Aviation Safety Center, was deployed last night and already is in Washington, D.C. to investigate what's going on. We anticipate that the investigation will quickly be able to determine whether the aircraft was in the corridor and at the right altitude at the time of the incident. As I mentioned, next of kin notifications are ongoing. It's a tragedy, a horrible loss of life for those 64 souls on that civilian airliner, and of course, the 3 soldiers in that Black Hawk. They're in our prayers, their families and their communities. As people are notified, I can't imagine. And I know it's gone from a rescue mission to a recovery mission, and we're with all the first responders that are moving actively too. So at the Defense Department, our thoughts and prayers go out. We are actively investigating to find out what happened and why. And as we get updates, you will have them. God bless.
So I would guess he's not going to be in the press briefing since he just did that about an hour ago, an hour and a half ago. He said they were doing annual proficiency training. Let me just remove that. Hang on a moment here. Hang on a moment. Do we have volume here?
8:48.
Yes, we have some volume.
He was being updated by officials throughout the night, posting regularly about the updates that they were getting. Remember, his transportation secretary had only been sworn in a few hours before this crash had happened. He was on the scene at Reagan National Airport last night after spending several hours at the FAA headquarters here in Washington monitoring these developments as that search and rescue.
Thank you to Spyman, by the way. Thank you all for joining us. We are bringing you live coverage of President Trump's press briefing on this accident. Thank you also, Notorious Rob, as well. The press briefing on the crash of this American Airlines plane, which collided with a helicopter, an Army helicopter, as the plane was about to land at Reagan Airport in Washington, D.C.
He next said earlier that these were fairly experienced pilots who had been on this plane, 3 crew members in all that were on board, and a lot of questions as none of them have been identified yet. As we're waiting to hear an update on that, and also from the Transportation Secretary himself, potentially on the status of this investigation that is going to get underway, given this is the deadliest commercial airliner crash in the United States since 2001. And so that will be something that they will be launching an investigation, as we'll be waiting to see what that looks
Well,
like.
we're told that the president will be making remarks before he takes questions here, and there are going to be a lot of questions about what he had to say online last night. When he said that this could have been prevented, how did he know that so quickly when the NTSB investigation was not even underway at that point? Does he have information that is not available to the rest of us? The answer to that is surely yes. And so there will be a lot of questions about that, a lot of questions about the use of this airspace, why a training mission was taking place so close to the end of an active runway, whether it was necessary to conduct the training mission in that exact location, and with the new Secretary of Defense here as well.
Yeah, it's what's happening is 2 different reporters are doing live hits at once. Caitlin Collins of CNN, she's off camera. She is doing a live hit, and then this reporter, I'm sorry, I don't know who this reporter is in the middle. She is doing, I believe, a live hit as well. So you have different reporters who will go live for their networks right before the event happens.
FAA administrator at this moment, and so that's one of the questions that we'll be asking in this briefing today. Who exactly is in control of the FAA right now? Does the president have faith in them? Does he wish that the FAA director who stepped down on the day that he was sworn in, who had been criticized heavily by Elon Musk, does he wish that he would have encouraged him to stay on the job?
I do not know how much new information we might get from President Trump. Will he have people with him? That I don't know.
So many questions coming up about congestion at Reagan National Airport, new flights being added there every year or 2. Are there too many flights there? What's the situation with air traffic control staffing? Does that need to be addressed? Air traffic control.
I don't really know what's going to happen.
Are going to come up, and so that, the president will be here. The Secretary of Transportation will be here after.
Oh, Sean Duffy's going to be there. She just said that. I think I had read that before, that the Secretary of Transportation will be there.
The lay of the land. They're still trying to figure out their way around these agencies, just kind of get their bearings, and they're already being placed in this.
Tina says we will hear more on this. Again, it is such a strange, in addition to being a huge tragedy, it's such a strange incident. As I was saying before, air traffic control asked the helicopter if it could see the plane shortly before the collision. And the helicopter said, yes, it could see the plane, and it asked for visual separation, which means it's asking to... Basically, it's saying we see the plane well enough that we can keep our distance from it just using visuals. We don't need your help. So the helicopter said they could see the plane, and then not long after that, I mean, from the audio I heard, it sounded like 15 or 20 seconds after maybe, they collided with the plane. The air traffic control told it to go behind the plane, to cross behind the plane once the plane had gone by. But how does that happen?
They were on a required annual night evaluation, and they did have night goggles. He said an investigation is being conducted to understand.
You can hear another reporter is talking in the room.
In the right order. Of the
Yeah, some of our viewers are saying maybe it was looking at the wrong plane. You would just think though that, you know, I mean this is a situation that comes up all the time there, I believe. So you'd think they would have procedures to make sure you're not looking at the wrong plane. They would have some kind of. You'd think any kind of easily makeable mistake would be one where they would have figured out a way to avoid that, given the huge consequences. Maybe it could be a combination of things that happened all at once. So I'm not an aviation expert. I'm not going to even try to say. Now it looks like, have they gotten a 2-minute warning yet or not? Because everybody seems to be quiet in there. It's 11:09. Oops. I should lose the 11 ET because no longer, it's now after 11 ET. The White House is live. All right, so let me just put something up. Let me just get something up on the screen so I'm ready to. I might switch to the White House feed because their feed tends to have better shots of the questioners. So I'm gonna hide this for right now. I'm gonna put it up there, then I'm gonna hide it. Hang on. Let me hide this one. But I might when he comes out, I might go to the other shot. Hang on. There it is. I didn't even have to do that. All right. Test something here. All right, we're good to go. Now we're gonna stick on this. I don't want to start getting distracted talking about the crash and showing other visuals and everything because I don't want to miss the start of this. So. No, Spyman, nobody on the ground was hurt that we've heard of. The entire search scene was in the water. There was no search scene on land that we know of. Thank you, Susan's Entropy Apothecary and Ride with OG, by the way. We are here live, waiting for President Trump. It seems like there must have been a warning given because everybody's sitting and quiet. Normally, if it's like just before the briefing, they kind of are hanging out talking. Now, I might be wrong. I'm wondering if somebody gave them a warning. Maybe I missed it, but although Peter Alexander is standing up, so I don't know. Maybe he hasn't gotten a warning because he's standing up there. The briefing was scheduled to start at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Our viewer, Michelle Batten, says these families are grieving right now. My heart hurts for them. Yeah, 67 people all killed. 64 on the plane, 3 on the helicopter. Certainly condolences to their families. Just terrible. I don't want to start showing visuals right now because I don't want to miss the start of the press conference. So I'm going to avoid getting distracted on the visual stuff. If I hear that he's delayed a long time, then I will, but I don't want to get distracted and do that. I will check and see if I see any updates while we wait. A number of figure skaters in the U.S. figure skating program are believed to have been on the plane, as well as some coaches and relatives of them, which we talked about in the earlier stream. Will we get some new information from Trump that we haven't heard yet? We will have to see. Thanks, by the way, to PZ Papa Zulu, Rusty Gold, Mr. Snowcass. Again, shout out to our moderators. They are always here. They're the reason that we can even have chat rooms. Huge thanks to them. Roberts May Queen Carms, for example, Cynthia Moon, Linda Belk and Larry on X. Big Ball of Yarn Hearsay on Twitch, LB Prairie Dawn, I Got That Fire, Sarah, Papa Bear, Surly Dev, thank you. Christina Neal, thanks Christina. Paul Anderson over there on Facebook, thank you so much. Appreciate all of our moderators. Thanks Marnie as well. It is 11:18. The official start time was 11. Chad Pergram from Fox News says that, hold on a second here. Maria Cantwell, senator from Washington, said that 2-minute warning. 2-minute warning. She said she will be receiving a briefing from the FAA and NTSB at noon. So a senator told Chad Pergram she would be well, I don't know if she told him, but a senator said she would be receiving a briefing from the NTSB and FAA at noon. That would be like a private thing. All right, so we just heard a 2-minute warning. You heard it.
I will, yeah, so I will say that, you know, in a disaster, in a tragedy, leaders rise above whatever else they might be arguing about or disagreeing over. You saw this out in California with the wildfires, even though there were dramatic disagreements about even the facts of why water was unavailable, you still saw the president and members of Congress from opposing parties
Probably about a minute.
wanted to work together and do everything they could to help people who have been affected by those fires. And you have the same thing here, where there are multiple jurisdictions in what we call the DMV, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, and the federal government, the D.C. government, Virginia, Maryland, they were all involved in search and rescue efforts and ultimately now recovery efforts. And working together. You had senators from, Republican senators from Kansas at the same press conference as Democratic senators from Virginia. And so coming together around this. And we're expecting President Trump to come into this room and deliver a message to the American people as the President of the United States, the President for all Americans and Americans.
Sure, so we are expecting the President to walk out here to the briefing room at any moment now. It'll be his first time behind this podium since taking office for the second time. We anticipate he will be joined by others. The Secretary of Defense has arrived here at the White House as well. Back to you, Tom.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'd like to request a moment of silence for the victims and their families, please. Thank you very much. I speak to you this morning in an hour of anguish for our nation. Just before 9 p.m. last night, an American Airlines regional jet carrying 60 passengers and 4 crew collided with an Army Black Hawk helicopter carrying 3 military service members over the Potomac River in Washington, D.C., while on final approach to Reagan National Airport. Both aircraft crashed instantly and were immediately submerged into the icy waters of the Potomac. Real tragedy. The massive search and rescue mission was underway throughout the night, leveraging every asset at our disposal, and I have to say the local, state, federal, military, including the United States Coast Guard in particular, they've done a phenomenal job. So quick, so fast, it was mobilized immediately. The work has now shifted to a recovery mission. Sadly, there are no survivors. This was a dark and excruciating night in our nation's capital and in our nation's history, and a tragedy of terrible proportions. As one nation, we grieve for every precious soul that has been taken from us so suddenly. And we are a country of, really, we are in mourning. This has really shaken a lot of people, including people, very sadly, from other nations who were on the flight. For the family members back in Wichita, Kansas, here in Washington, D.C., and throughout the United States and in Russia, we have a Russia contingent, some very talented people, unfortunately, were on that plane. Very, very, very sorry about that. Whose loved ones were aboard the passenger jet. We can only begin to imagine the agony that you're all feeling. Nothing worse. On behalf of the First Lady, myself, and 340 million Americans, our hearts are shattered alongside yours, and our prayers are with you now and in the days to come. We'll be working very, very diligently in the days to come. We're here for you to wipe away the tears and to offer you our devotion, our love, and our support. There's great support. In moments like this, the differences between Americans fade to nothing compared to the bonds of affection and loyalty that unite us all, both as Americans and even as nations. We are one family, and today we are all heartbroken. We're all searching for answers. That icy, icy Potomac, it was a cold, cold night, cold water. We're all overcome with the grief for many who have so tragically perished, will no longer be with us. Together we take solace in the knowledge that their journey ended not in the cold waters of the Potomac, but in the warm embrace of a loving God. We do not know what led to this crash, but we have some very strong opinions and ideas, and I think we'll probably state those opinions now. Because over the years I've watched as things like this happen, and they say, well, we're always investigating, and then the investigation 3 years later, they announce it. We think we have some pretty good ideas. But we'll find out how this disaster occurred, and we'll ensure that nothing like this ever happens again. The FAA and the NTSB and the U.S. military will be carrying out a systematic and comprehensive investigation. Our new Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, his second day on the job when that happened. It's a rough one. We'll be working tirelessly. He's a great gentleman. The whole group these are great people, and they are working tirelessly to figure out exactly what happened. We will state certain opinions, however. I'm also immediately appointing an acting commissioner to the FAA, Christopher Rocheleau, a 22-year veteran of the agency, highly respected. Christopher, thank you very much. Appreciate it. We must have only the highest standards for those who work in our aviation system. I changed the Obama standards from very mediocre at best to extraordinary. You remember that. Only the highest aptitude, they have to be the highest intellect and psychologically superior people were allowed to qualify for air traffic controllers. That was not so prior to getting there. When I arrived in 2016, I made that change very early on because I always felt this was a job that, and other jobs too, but this was a job that had to be superior intelligence, and we didn't really have that, and we had it. And then when I left office and Biden took over, he changed them back to lower than ever before. I put safety first. Obama, Biden, and the Democrats put policy first. And they put politics at a level that nobody's ever seen, because this was the lowest level. Their policy was horrible, and their politics was even worse. So as you know, last week, long before the crash, I signed an executive order restoring our highest standards for air traffic controllers and other important jobs throughout the country. So it was very interesting. About a week ago, almost upon entering office, I signed something last week that was an executive order, very powerful one, restoring the highest standards of air traffic controllers and others, by the way. Then my administration will set the highest possible bar for aviation safety. We have to have our smartest people. It doesn't matter what they look like, how they speak, who they are. It matters intellect, talent, the word talent. They have to be talented, naturally talented geniuses. You can't have regular people doing that job. They won't be able to do it. But we'll restore faith in American air travel. I'll have more to say about that. I do want to point out that various articles that appeared prior to my entering office, and here's one. The FAA's diversity push includes focus on hiring people with severe intellectual and psychiatric disabilities. That is amazing. And then it says FAA says people with severe disabilities are most underrepresented segment of the workforce, and they want them in, and they want them, they can be air traffic controllers. I don't think so. This was in January 14th, so that was a week before I entered office. They put a big push to put diversity into the FAA's program. Then another article, the Federal Aviation Administration, this was before I got to office, recently, second term. The FAA is actively recruiting workers who suffer severe intellectual disabilities, psychiatric problems, and other mental and physical conditions under a diversity and inclusion hiring initiative spelled out on the agency's website. Can you imagine? These are people that are, I mean, actually, their lives are shortened because of the stress that they have. Brilliant people have to be in those positions. And their lives are actually shortened, very substantially shortened because of the stress, where you have many, many planes coming into one target. And you need a very special talent and a very special genius to be able to do it. Targeted disabilities are those disabilities that the federal government, as a matter of policy, has identified for special emphasis in recruitment and hiring. The FAA's website states they include hearing, vision, missing extremities, partial paralysis, complete paralysis, epilepsy, severe intellectual disability, psychiatric disability, and dwarfism all qualify for the position of a controller of airplanes pouring into our country, pouring into a little spot, a little dot on the map, a little runway. The initiative is part of the FAA's diversity and inclusion hiring plan. Think of that. The initiative is part of the FAA's diversity and inclusion hiring plan, which says diversity is integral to achieving FAA's mission of ensuring safe and efficient travel. I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it's just the opposite. The FAA website shows that the agency's guidance on diversity hiring were last updated on March 23rd of 22. They wanted to make it even more so. And then I came in, and I assume maybe this is the reason. The FAA, which is overseen by Secretary Pete Buttigieg, a real winner. That guy's a real winner. Do you know how badly everything's run since he's run this Department of Transportation? He's a disaster. He was a disaster as a mayor. He ran his city into the ground, and he's a disaster now. He's just got a good line of bullshit. The Department of Transportation, his government agency charged with regulating civil aviation. Well, he runs it, 45,000 people, and he's run it right into the ground with his diversity. So I had to say that it's terrible. Then it's a group within the FAA, another story, determined that the workforce was too white, that they had concerted efforts to get the administration to change that and to change it immediately. This was in the Obama administration just prior to my getting there. And we took care of African Americans, Hispanic Americans. We took care of everybody at levels that nobody's ever seen before. It's one of the reasons I won. But they actually came out with a directive, too white. And we want the people that are competent. But now we mourn and we pray, and would like to ask all Americans to join me in a moment of silence as we ask God to watch over those who have lost their lives and bring comfort to the loved ones. And I just want to say God bless everyone in this room. This has been a terrible, very short period of time. We'll get to the bottom of it. So we all saw the same thing. We've seen it many times. I've had the honor of hearing tapes. Tapes are scary, very scary tapes. You had a airliner coming in, American Airlines. He was doing everything right. He was on track. He was the same track as everybody else that came in. It's probably the same track as they've had for 25 years or more. He's coming in the path. And for some reason, you had a helicopter that was at the same height, obviously when they hit, but pretty much the same height, and going at an angle that was unbelievably bad. When the air traffic controller said, "Do you see?" He was talking about, "Do you see him?" But there was very little time left when that was stated. And then also he said, "Follow him in." And then almost immediately after that, seconds after that, there was the crash that took place. Well, you follow him in, that means like everything's fine. Follow him in. You had a pilot problem from the standpoint of the helicopter. I mean, because it was visual. It was a very clear night. It was cold but clear, and clear as you could be. The American Airlines plane had lights blazing. They had all of their landing lights on. I could see it from the Kennedy Center tape. We had a tape up on the Kennedy Center. That seems to be the primary. Thus far, I'm sure we'll see other tapes because it's such an area where there are a lot of cameras looking up into the air, into space. So we'll probably see many other shots of it before too much time goes by. But we had a situation where you had a helicopter that had the ability to stop. I have helicopters. You can stop a helicopter very quickly. It had the ability to go up or down. It had the ability to turn. And the turn it made was not the correct turn, obviously. It did somewhat the opposite of what it was told. We don't know that would have been the difference because the timing was so tight. It was so little. There was so little time to think. But what you did have is you had vision. The helicopter had vision of the plane because you had vision of it all the way, perfect vision of it all the way from at Kennedy Center where the tape was taken. And for some reason, there weren't adjustments made. Again, you could have slowed down the helicopter substantially. You could have stopped the helicopter. You could have gone up. You could have gone down. You could have gone straight up, straight down. You could have turned. You could have done a million different maneuvers. For some reason, it just kept going and then made a slight turn at the very end, and by that time it was too late. They shouldn't have been at the same height, because if it was at the same height, you could have gone under it or over it, and nobody realized, or they didn't say that it's at the same height. At the same height, it still wouldn't have been great, but you would have missed it by quite a bit. Could have been 1,000 feet higher. It could have been 200 feet lower, but it was exactly at the same height, and somebody should have been able to point that out. So all of this is going to be studied, but it just seems to me, from a couple of words that I like to use, the words common sense, some really bad things happened, and some things happened that shouldn't have happened. So you had a helicopter going in an identical direction. You had a helicopter that was at the exact same height as somebody going in essentially the opposite direction. You had a plane that was following a track, which is a track that every other plane followed. And I don't imagine, I know I've heard today that they might have been following the preceding plane, which was pretty close, but not that close, the preceding plane. But you wouldn't have even been able to see that because of the direction that the helicopter was coming in at. So you had a confluence of bad decisions that were made. And you have people that lost their lives, violently lost their lives. we're going to take a few questions. I'd like to ask our new Secretary of Transportation to say a few words. Sean Duffy, great gentleman, just started. It's not your fault, and I know you agree with me very strongly on intellect and even psychological well-being of the air traffic control. It's such an important position, and I think I can't emphasize stronger. I changed it when I first ran in 2016. I changed it. We had the highest standard that you could have, and then they changed it back. That was Biden, to a standard I read it to you. That was from one of your papers. One of the people in this room actually wrote that. And then I changed it back a few days ago. And unfortunately, that was, we'll see. We don't know that necessarily it's even the controller's fault. But one thing we do know, there was a lot of vision, and people should have been able to see that, you know, at what point do you stop? At what point do you say, wow, that plane's getting a little bit close? So this is a tragedy that should not have happened. Please, Sean.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I would just note the President's leadership has been remarkable during this crisis. We have had a whole of government response, local, state, federal, and when you see that kind of cooperation, it begins with the leadership in this body. So thank you for that, Mr. President. You make our jobs a lot easier. You made an important point that when we deal with safety, we can only accept the best and the brightest in positions of safety that impact the lives of our loved ones, our family members. And I think you make a really important point on that, Mr. President. That is the motto of your presidency, the best and the brightest, the most intelligent coming into these spaces. I want to take a moment and extend my condolences to the families of the loved ones. We commit to them that we are going to get to the bottom of this investigation, not in 3 years, not in 4 years, but as quickly as possible, with the NTSB, who is here today, as well as the FAA. What happened yesterday shouldn't have happened. It should not have happened. And when Americans take off in airplanes, they should expect to land at their destination. That didn't happen yesterday. That's not acceptable. And so we will not accept excuses. We will not accept passing the buck. We are going to take responsibility at the Department of Transportation and the FAA to make sure we have the reforms that have been dictated by President Trump in place to make sure that these mistakes do not happen again. And again, I want to thank you for your leadership, Mr. President, and I appreciate the confidence you placed in me. Thank you.
Pete would like to say something, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Again, I want to echo what the Transportation Secretary said about your leadership. From the moment we found out about this, we were in contact with the White House trying to determine exactly what happened. I would echo it as well. No excuses. We're going to get to the bottom of this. We first and foremost, from the Defense Department, want to pass our condolences to the 64 souls and their families that were affected by this. Never should happen. And certainly the 3 service members, the 3 soldiers, a young captain, staff sergeant, and a CW2, Chief Warrant Officer, on a routine annual retraining of night flights on a standard corridor for a continuity of government mission. The military does dangerous things. It does routine things on the regular basis. Tragically, last night, a mistake was made. And I think the president is right. There was some sort of an elevation issue that we have immediately begun investigating at the DOD and Army level. Army CID is on the ground investigating. Top-tier aviation assets inside the DOD are investigating, sir, to get to the bottom of it so that it does not happen again, because it's absolutely unacceptable. But I want to echo what the Transportation Secretary and you, Mr. President, said, because it pertains to the DOD as well. We will have the best and brightest in every position possible. As you said in your inaugural, it is colorblind and merit-based. The best leaders possible, whether it's flying Black Hawks and flying airplanes, leading platoons, or in government. The era of DEI is gone at the Defense Department, and we need the best and brightest, whether it's in our air traffic control, or whether it's in our generals, or whether it's throughout government. So thank you for your leadership and courage on that, sir, and we'll stand by you on it. Thank you.
Very much. JD, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership. I just want to reemphasize something the President said, and you've heard from the Secretary of Transportation and of Defense. There really was a whole of government response. We were all on the phone. We were all communicating yesterday, trying to get to the bottom of this immediately, but also try to communicate with the American people about what happened. Something the President said that I think bears reemphasizing, which is that when you don't have the best standards in who you're hiring, it means on the one hand, you're not getting the best people in government, but on the other hand, it puts stresses on the people who are already there. And I think that is a core part of what President Trump is going to bring and has already brought to Washington, D.C. is we want to hire the best people because we want the best people at air traffic control, and we want to make sure we have enough people at air traffic control who are actually competent to do the job. If you go back to just some of the headlines over the past 10 years, you have many hundreds of people suing the government because they would like to be air traffic controllers, but they were turned away because of the color of their skin. That policy ends under Donald Trump's leadership because safety is the first priority of our aviation industry. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, on DEI and the claims that you've made, are you saying this crash was somehow caused and the result of diversity hiring? And what evidence have you seen to support these claims?
It just could have been. We have a high standard. We've had a much higher standard than anybody else. And there are things where you have to go by brain power, you have to go by psychological quality. And psychological quality is a very important element of it. These are various very powerful tests that we put to use, and they were terminated by Biden. And Biden went by a standard that's the exact opposite. So we don't know, but we do know that you had two planes at the same level. You had a helicopter and a plane. That shouldn't have happened. And we'll see. We're going to look into that, and we're going to see. But certainly for an air traffic controller, we want the brightest, the smartest, the sharpest. We want somebody that's psychologically superior, and that's what we're going to have. Yeah.
Mr. President.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Mr. President, you mentioned at the top of the briefing that there were several Russian nationals on the flight.
Yes.
Will the U.S. government be willing to facilitate the transfer of their remains, considering
Yes, we
the
will.
fact there is no direct air travel between the two countries?
We've already been in contact with Russia, and the answer is yes, we will facilitate. Yes. Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. The situation in the Democratic Republic of the Congo is getting worse, even though President John Lorenzo has been mediating the conflict between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo because he wants to bring peace and stability. The situation is really bad right now. I want to hear from Ms. President if you have any plan in the future to bring peace in the
Well,
Democratic
you're asking me a
Republic
question
of the
about
Congo.
Rwanda, and it is a very serious problem. I agree, but I don't think it's appropriate right now to talk about it. But it is a very serious problem.
Mr. President, we don't even yet know the names of the 67 people who were killed, and you are blaming Democrats and DEI policies and air traffic control and seemingly the member of the U.S. military who was flying that Black Hawk helicopter. Don't you think you're getting ahead of the investigation right now?
No, I don't think so at all. I don't think with the names of the people. You mean the names of the people that are on the plane? You think that's going to make a difference? They are a group of people that have lost their lives. If you want a list of the names, we can give you that. We'll be giving that very soon. We're in coordination with American Airlines. We're in coordination very strongly, obviously, with the military. But I think that's not a very smart question. I'm surprised coming from you. Please.
Thank you, President Trump. Thank you for being here. Based on your analysis so far, do you have a sense of who is at fault, if it was the plane, the helicopter, air traffic control, and can you assure people that it is safe to fly in and out of D.C.?
Well, I've given you the analysis, and the analysis was it was based on vision. You had a lot of people that saw what was happening. You had some people that knew what was happening. There was some warnings, but the warnings were given very, very late. You know, those warnings were given very late. It was almost as they were given. A few seconds later, there was the crash. It should have been brought up earlier. But the people in the helicopter should have seen where they were going. I can't imagine people with 20/20 vision not seeing, you know, what's happening up there. Again, they shouldn't have been at the same height. You're going in reverse directions or sideways directions. Obviously, you want to be at different heights. I see it all the time when I'm flying. I you have planes going in the opposite. They're always lower, we're higher, so if somehow there's a screw up, there's not going to be a tragedy. It'll be close, but there's never going to be a tragedy if you're at a different elevation. For whatever reason, they were at the same elevation. And also, from the American Airlines standard, he's along the track that every plane is along. You say, what was a helicopter doing in that track? It's very sad. But visually, somebody should have been able to see and taken that helicopter out of play. And they should have been at a different height.
Thank you, sir. You mentioned the Russians that were on board that plane. What other nationalities were on board that passenger?
There were a couple of others. We're going to be announcing it in about an hour. We have some very specific information. We're calling the countries. We've spoken to most of them, but there were some other countries represented.
Mr. President, have you spoken to President Putin?
I have not, no.
Mr. President, on your executive order.
Not about this.
On your executive order, you've already issued an executive order you say will restore aviation safety.
Right.
This crash happened after that. Was the executive order successful, and what more needs to change to keep people safe?
Well, we issued it 3 days ago, and we're in the process of making those changes. This is something that should have been done a long time ago. Actually, my original order should have never been changed, and I think maybe you wouldn't have had this problem. Maybe. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. We see like everyday life that very often those diversity hires cause sometimes issues, as you just mentioned. So what plan do you have? Are we going to see some fire? Are you going to fire some of those diversity hire in the federal government? What plan do you have?
I would say the answer is yes. If we find that people aren't mentally competent, you see the language. The language is put out by them. And if you see that, I'm not going to bore you by reading it again, but these are not people that should be doing this particular job. They'd be very good for certain jobs, but not people that should be doing this particular job.
Mr. President, you have today blamed the diversity elements, but then told us that you weren't sure that the controllers made any mistake. You then said perhaps the helicopter pilots were the ones who made the mistake.
It's all under investigation.
I understand that. That's why I'm trying to figure out how you can come to the conclusion right now that diversity had something to do with this crash.
Because I have common sense, okay? And unfortunately, a lot of people don't. We want brilliant people doing this. This is a major chess game at the highest level. When you have 60 planes coming in during a short period of time, and they're all coming in different directions, and you're dealing with very high-level computer work and very complex computers. And one of the other things I will tell you is that the systems that were built, I was going to rebuild the entire system, and then we had an election that didn't turn out the way it should have. But they didn't build the systems properly. They spent a lot of money renovating a system, spending much more money than they would have spent if they bought a new system for air traffic controllers, meaning the computerized systems. There are certain companies that do a very good job. They didn't use those companies. They used companies that should not have been doing it. No, I think it's very important to understand that for some jobs, and not only this, but air traffic controllers, they have to be at the highest level of genius. Okay.
I want to ask you about the ice skaters in a moment because the U.S. Ice Skating Committee was affected. But first, if I can, the cited FAA text that you read is real. But the implication that this policy is new or that it stems from efforts that began under President Biden or the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg is demonstrably false. It's been on the FAA's website.
Who said that, you?
No, it's on the website, the FAA's website. It was there in 2013. It was there for the
Take
entirety.
a look, what I read.
It was there for the entirety of your administration,
Nice and easy.
too. So my question is, why didn't you change the policy during your first administration?
I did change it. I changed the Obama policy, and we had a very good policy. And then Biden came in, and he changed it. And then when I came in 3 days ago, I signed a new order bringing it to the highest level of intelligence. Okay.
It was on the website.
Please.
Respectfully, it was on the website.
Quiet.
Thank you. Welcome back to the. I'm sorry. You mentioned that a vision was probably the problem that was at issue in this crash. There's been some reports that one of the pilots in the helicopter may have been using night vision equipment. Was there any?
I heard that. We don't know. We're going to know that pretty soon. It may change your view plane if you do have the night vision. So it's very possible that could have happened. That would be maybe a reason why you wouldn't actually see as well as on a clear night. You can see sometimes better without it. Had a couple of more.
Mr. President, is it helpful to have your Secretary of Transportation confirmed, and does this intensify your interest in getting other nominees confirmed quickly?
Go to what?
Is it helpful to have your Secretary of Transportation confirmed, and does this intensify your interest in getting other nominees confirmed quickly as well?
Well, sure. We want fast confirmations, and the Democrats, as you know, are doing everything they can to delay them. They've taken too long. We're struggling to get very good people that everybody knows are going to be confirmed, but we're struggling to get them out faster. We want them out faster. It's a good question, actually. We've been pushing Sean. Everyone knows Sean for a long time. He got many, many Democrat votes, but they want to take as long as they can. They ask questions like some of the questions that Peter would ask that were totally irrelevant and not very good questions, but they want to just keep it going. They want to keep it going as long as possible. I was very honored, actually, that you got so many Democrat votes. That was really good. That was really good.
When I apply to meet with the families, and second question, is it your impression that military training was done during that time?
The what?
The training that the helicopter was involved in. Is it anything you can tell us about
You
that?
don't know. These are the things that will come up with the investigation. You don't know. But the helicopter obviously was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and a tragedy occurred. Please.
I've got a question about the...
No, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. You've been critical of the current regulations, and you've called for big reforms at FAA. I'm curious, sir.
Well, I made the reforms, actually.
What is your message?
3 days ago, I made the
Yes,
reforms.
sir. What is your message then to the American public in the weeks and months ahead? Should they feel hesitant to fly? And if you could clarify perhaps something that the Defense Secretary said when he said that this helicopter was on a continuity of government mission?
I don't know what that refers to, but they were practicing. They do that. They call it practicing, and they were, and that's something that should be done. It's only continuity in the sense that we want to have very good people, and that has to be in continuity, and that's what they refer to. But it was basically practice, and it was a practice that worked out very, very badly. Okay.
On his question, the first question, should people be hesitant to fly right now?
No, not at all. I've not hesitated to fly. This is something that it's been many years that something like this has happened, and the collision is just something that we don't expect ever to happen again. We are going to have the highest level people. We've already hired some of the people that you've already hired for that position long before we knew about this. I mean, long before. From the time I came in, we started going out and getting the best people because I said it's not appropriate what they're doing. I think it's a tremendous mistake. You know, they like to do things and they like to take them too far, and this is sometimes what ends up happening. Now, with that, I'm not blaming the controller. I'm saying there are things that you could question, like the height of the helicopter, the height of the plane being at the same level and going in opposite directions. It's not a positive. But no, we're already hiring people. No, flying is very safe. We have the safest flying anywhere in the world, and we'll keep it that way. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much,
All right, that was President Trump's press briefing about the plane crash. I think it's probably, if I had to describe it, I'd say he came out for about 5 minutes and tried to comfort the nation about what had happened. And then, but most of the, correct me if I'm wrong, most of the press conference seemed to be him implying that the DEI hiring policies of Democratic presidential administrations had led to inferior air traffic controllers being hired, which caused the crash. At the same time, he was saying we don't know what caused the crash. But, I mean, I just watched that, and that seemed to be his main point was that DEI hiring policies hired inferior air traffic controllers. Again, there was no evidence presented about what exactly happened in the crash and which, if it was a controller at fault, who the controller is. So we'll have to see. I'm interested in seeing how the NTSB hearing goes now. So with the NTSB hearing, I'm assuming the NTSB, my memory of them is that they like to kind of say, hey, we got to let the facts, lead us. We're not going to start jumping to conclusions. But I assume the NTSB is going to get questions like, well, the president said that this is what happened. Do you agree with that or not? So how will the NTSB handle the inevitable questions where people say, well, you say you don't know NTSB, but the president says he knows. So that's a whole other thing. All right, I want to take some comments from you guys. I will say, I don't know what I was expecting, but that was certainly a surprising press conference to me. Okay, let me take some comments from you guys. To be clear, though, we don't know from that press conference what happened. And when pressed, Trump said that the investigation had to determine what exactly the cause was. So we do not know. He did not. He did not come out and say like, "Oh, I got this briefing and they told me this is what happened, and I'm not supposed to tell you, but I'm going to tell you." He didn't say that. Anyways, let's see. I want to read some comments from you guys. One of our viewers, YDJ, said he said that it could be that, not that it is. Well, look, he spent a lot of time implying that it is. Now, granted, when pressed, he would say things like, well, I don't know. But saying I don't know at one time does not nullify the fact that he was implying it for a lot of the time. So, that's just a fact of the matter, is that he spent a lot of time implying that that's what it was. As I said, when pressed, he said we don't know. But just because you say you don't know at some point during the press conference doesn't nullify everything you've said during the rest of the press conference. So he was clearly implying it a lot of the time. I don't know what the cause of it was. Maybe the NTSB will ultimately conclude, maybe the NTSB will come out with their report in 6 months or a year, and the report will say, you know what the problem was? We, the NTSB, conclude that the air traffic controller was not qualified to do the job and was a very poor air traffic controller, and they were hired only because they were a certain skin color or something else. And if we had had a normal air traffic controller, this would not have happened. Now maybe they'll say that. Maybe that's what the NTSB will say. So I don't know what they're going to say. But maybe they'll say it's something else. Let's see here. Let's see here. Miranda says you could have an opinion and state your opinion is not fact. He literally said he had opinions to share. Again, Trump likes to use the phrase common sense. To me, if you have common sense and you watch that press conference, you would say most of the time he was implying that that DEI hiring policies of Democratic presidents caused inferior air traffic controllers to be hired, and that resulted in the plane crash. Now, you can say a couple times he said, certainly a couple times he said, I don't know when pressed. But to me, if you have common sense, you're not going to say, oh, just because he said once or twice it could have been something else. That erases what he did the rest of the press conference. So I'm sorry, I'm going to have to respectfully disagree with you if you say just because once or twice he said I'm not sure, that nullifies the implication of the press conference. To me, common sense says there was a clear implication of that press conference. I didn't say he definitively said it, but he certainly seemed to be implying it most of the time he was there. And that's just, as I said, I don't know. I don't know what happened. I have no idea what the NTSB is going to say. I honestly don't know. I have no idea. I do wonder, how will air traffic controllers feel about this? Will they not have a strong opinion about it? Will air traffic controllers watching that feel like they're being singled out? I don't know. Darth Pronator says it is impossible that it does not increase the chance of the crash if we hire ATC people for reasons other than being the best. How can anyone dispute that? First of all, I don't claim to know. I assume there are standards for air traffic controllers that any of them need to meet to get hired. I can't speak to who was hired and what the standards are. But I'm not talking. You seem to be saying, Darth Pronator, your point is, if we do hire people other than for skill level, then that increases the likelihood of a crash, which is a theoretical point about hiring. This press conference was not supposed to be a seminar at a university about how, in theory, hiring practices affect crashes. We have a specific crash that happened hours ago, and this was supposed to be a press briefing about this crash. So I am not going to dispute your theoretical point that if you start hiring people who are of lower quality, it increases the likelihood of poor job performance. But at the same time, I don't see what the relevance of that is to this crash if we don't know what the cause of the crash is, and we don't, if it was an air traffic controller, who was that air traffic controller? What if it turns out that the air traffic controller, first of all, we have no idea if the air traffic controller was at fault at all. Second of all, say the air traffic controller was at fault, but either, let's say they were hired under a Republican presidential administration. Let's say, suppose the air traffic controller scored the highest of any air traffic controller applicant on all of their exams that they take, if they take exams, I don't know. My point is that there's so much we don't know. So, again, saying, I don't see how saying if you hire worse people, that could make a bad job performance more likely, is necessarily relevant in this case to this crash, because we don't know what the cause of this crash was. And even if it was an air traffic controller, we don't know the specifics about that air traffic controller. And Trump was not making a theoretical point in much of this press conference. He was implying that this particular accident that happened hours ago was a result of DEI policies by Democratic administrations. Tin Bedger says ATC should definitely be some of our best individuals. I'm sure it's a very challenging job. I would assume that no matter who is in office, and who's the president that there are standards they have to meet, rigorous standards to be an air traffic controller. I do not know specifics about who was hired when, under what president, and what the policy was. And also, I certainly don't know whether the air traffic controller was at fault in any sort of way in this accident, and if they were at fault, who that person was, and whether hiring policy had anything to do with them being in their job. Now, some of our viewers have written in saying they think that it was not appropriate for him to talk about this topic at this press conference. Walter Beasley, our viewer, thinks it was ugly and disrespects the office unless he has actual proof and articulates it. I don't know what Trump knows and what proof he has. Some of you liked the press conference. I could see the comments. Some of you liked it. Some of you didn't like it. Some of our viewers are saying the helicopter was at fault. Again, I don't know. As I've been saying during our coverage all along, I have no idea who was at fault. And I'm going to wait until we have the NTSB. Now, I do wonder what happens if the NTSB is under the executive branch, is it not? Let's see. I would think it is. Oh, it's not? Oh, Google AI says it's an independent federal agency, not part of the executive branch. Huh. Interesting. It is not part of the Department of Transportation. So it would not be under Trump, because Trump is the head of the executive branch. What I was thinking is, what if the NTSB finishes their investigation and Trump's view of what caused the accident is different from the NTSB's? The NTSB, according to Wikipedia, is a fully independent agency. It is not in the executive branch. The NTSB refers to a 5-manager investigative board whose 5 members are nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate for 5-year terms. No more than 3 of the 5 members may be from the same political party. I'm just reading from the Wikipedia NTSB entry. Interesting. I will say this, though, whatever you think of Trump, this was a very different approach than the usual, because normally a president would come out and say, I don't want to get ahead of the investigation. I'm going to, I will defer to the NTSB and we'll see what they say. Trump he explicitly said that he wasn't going to do that. He said something like, I'm going to say some things because usually you have to wait 3 years or something like that. So that was very different. Chris V says that's why he's different. He always gives his opinion of the matter. One of our viewers says, I'm curious how long the investigation will take. I don't know. I mean, I feel like with stuff like this, it can take months or years, but I haven't heard from the NTSB yet. Maybe they'll say that they think it'll be relatively fast. I don't know. Again, in my experience, the NTSB will come in and just say, we are not going to get ahead of the facts. We need to assemble the facts and see what the facts say. But I am very interested in seeing how that press conference goes, whenever that is. By the way, a quick thanks to I've Been Better, Johnny Mac, M-Town Lone Wolf, Raven Knight, Firestar the David L, KS, Blind Mike Sneakers, Rita, James 99, Sibian Peebler, Philip Nicholson, Bebop and Rocksteady, Unleash Pokey Gamer, Jorthio, Northwestern Rain, Patricia Banks, Mama 457 Rose, Jason Gowert, Test True Heart, Azure Fire, and my channel, Debbie James, Midnight Expose Media, Connor Garrity. I'm going to read some more comments here. Tom Coolcam, Bubba Tuba, Ascertainment over there on Twitch, Big and Qbat, and Marnie Spyman and Ride with OG. All right, let me read a few more comments from you guys. What did you think of the briefing? Our viewer, was it Wine Country Studios, said, I wonder if he knows more than we think. One of our viewers messaged me this. The Skating Club of Boston, New England's most comprehensive skating destination, posted that athletes, coaches, and family members that were on the American Eagle flight that crashed include Jinhan athlete, Jinhan, Spencer Lane athlete, Christine Lane, mom of Spencer, and then two coaches who I believe they were we talked about them earlier. They were the two coaches were Vadim Naumov and Evgenia Shishkova, who, if I remember right, are a married couple who won the world title in pair skating in 1994. They're from Russia, I believe, but they had moved to the U.S. So certainly condolences to all of their families. A number of people involved in the U.S. figure skating program, skaters, coaches, and relatives were on the plane, it has been reported. Squid Ink says, how will the TSA and the military feel about these statements? This was much more politically motivated than it was a statement on the incident, which again is on par with the president. By the way, Hollywood Fred said, "So LOL, so much for agenda free. Steve is sitting here trashing Trump's press conference." Now, it's interesting that you say that. I mean, what did I do? After the press conference, I said, this is what I believe happened. And I said, for the first 5 minutes or so, it seemed to be like an effort to comfort the country. And I said, most of it seemed to me like he was saying that the crash was due to, he was implying that the crash was due to the policies of, to Democratic presidents' DEI hiring policies, and specifically hiring inferior air traffic controllers because of DEI hiring policies. Now, in nothing of that, in nothing of what I just said, did I say it was a good press conference or a bad press conference. So it's interesting because I've gotten a few comments claiming like you have an agenda. Well, I never gave a judgment. I didn't tell you this was a great press conference or a bad press conference. All I said was, this is what he said. So if you're saying to me, you're trashing him, it sounds like you think it wasn't a good press. It sounds like you think that he shouldn't be implying this, and that you think it's a negative to say that about somebody. I didn't say that. All I said is this is what I think he did. And I don't think it was very controversial to say that. I was just saying this is what he talked about. So if you're saying, oh, you're attacking him, it sounds like what actually is happening is you think that it would be inappropriate for him to do that. And if I say that he did that, I must be attacking him. So I guess that's just a judgment you're making about that behavior, but I didn't sit here and tell you it was great, it was a bad press conference. I literally said, this is what it seemed to me, this is what happened. What you think about it is up to you. I mean, go back, send me the clip. I'd love to see the clip where I'm telling you guys it's a good press conference or a bad press conference. Please, send it to me. I'll play it on the air if you send it to me. Again, I know some of you liked it, liked the press conference, and some of you thought it was really inappropriate. I've seen both things in the chat. All right, so I wanted to cover that press conference, but we need to see what the NTSB has to say. There's more, by the way, so I appreciate a bunch of people are sending me other news items about this crash, and I appreciate that, but I only came on to cover this. I needed to actually get some rest, and I was going to before, but I didn't because this was happening, and I was like, well, I'll just stay up a little longer and cover this because I thought it was important to cover. But at this point, I think I'm going to hold off on covering any more of the crash because I assume we'll be doing more coverage of it. And I'm going to try to get some rest. But you know, there'll certainly be a lot more to cover. And I'm sorry if I miss stuff while I'm sleeping, but I need to do that. So I do very much appreciate you joining this stream and joining me for the coverage of the Trump press briefing on the D.C. plane crash. If you missed it, you can rewind and watch it. Subscribe and follow the channel, Agenda Free TV. We cover all kinds of live breaking news without an agenda, Agenda Free TV. Also, you can turn notifications on because I don't know when big news is going to happen. I'm not sure. I can't tell you in advance when we're coming back on the air and when there'll be some new story. So turn on the notifications. It's a free notification system. We set it up. It works awesome. You sign up once, you get sent a notification whenever we go live. The mods will post the link in the chat to the notifications. And you can also find that link in the YouTube and Facebook description of this broadcast. But sign up for the notifications. But I really do appreciate you guys tuning in and sending me comments and letting me read the comments on the air and sending me news tips as well. And I will post updates on my X account, which is where I post about breaking news. At Lookner on X. You can follow me right there, at Lookner on X for news when I am not live. And I will post a link in the chat. And by the way, a quick thanks to Massachusetts guy. Thank you, Massachusetts guy. Simp Nasty Scrimp, Chi-Town Deke on Twitch, Tom Cool Cam, and Bubba Tuba, and Maddie Ice, and Unleashed Pokey Gamer, and Daniel Boberson, and the Jimmy Struther, and McLean 33, and Jerome Donnelly, and PK. Hold on a second here. And I've Seen Better, and Johnny Mack. I want to give a special thank you to, and also I want to give a special thank you to our moderators, by the way. Thank you to Joy Marcus, too. Thank you, Joy Marcus. By the way, Donna Simmons and some other folks have asked if I'm going to apply for the White House press credential for new media. You know, I sent in the application thing. It's not, you don't have to send it, you can just apply online. I don't know if I would do it just because, you know, if you get it, you have to pay your own way. You have to go find a place to stay. And also, if I'm traveling there to cover a press briefing, to cover one press briefing, I can't be covering news while I'm traveling. So the channel where we cover news takes precedence. So it's maybe I'd consider doing it once just to do it, but I think you can understand how it would get in the way of doing the normal channel news coverage that we do. So, anyways. I'll keep you posted on it. Okay. Hey, thank you to our moderators for being here. I really, really appreciate it. Our moderators have been here since last night when we started covering this tragic event. They're the reason that we can have chat rooms. We couldn't have chat rooms otherwise. So I really, really appreciate them being here. People like Linda Belk and Larry over there on X, and Misha, thank you. Ruth Krafasi, Carms on YouTube, thank you. Hold on a second here. Hang on a second here. And all of our other YouTube moderators, thank you. And our Twitch moderators, thank you so much. Big Ball of Yarn, David Green, Hearsay, I Got That Fire, McBritches, Surly Dev, all of our other Twitch moderators, thank you. Our Facebook moderators, thank you to Kay Lowry Body, Paul Anderson, and all of our other mods. Christina Neal, thank you. Thank you, moderators. And thanks to everybody who donated too. That's really nice of you guys. And if you haven't seen the channel, I do this channel full time, so that's just what allows the channel to exist, is your support. So I really do appreciate it. Hopefully I thanked everyone. Thank you to Rival Killer 916 for the gift subscriptions on Twitch, and also Rocky Coast on Twitch. Thank you. Hey, we have a Discord chat. You can chat with other viewers when we're not on the air. at our Discord chat. It's free. A lot of our viewers like doing that. Check it out. It's the same link as the notifications link. And thanks to our Discord moderators, too, for all you do. Another good way to find out when we're going live, follow us on X at Agenda Free TV. I always post on at Agenda Free TV before we go live, and I post updates about the channel at Agenda Free TV. And hey, and thanks for everybody who's followed on Agenda Free TV on X. We have 100,000 followers on X. That's so nice of you. I appreciate you following on X. And again, good place to get updates about when we're going live. The X account. Let's see here. And also a quick reminder, if you do watch on YouTube, I would suggest turning the YouTube notifications on because that can help you find out when we're going live or when we're live. But if you want to turn the YouTube notifications on, you got to do this thing where you subscribe. And then after you subscribe, you got to click the notifications bell, that bell, and choose all notifications. If this actually works. Click, click. It's getting a little fidgety. Still fidgety? Why is it so fidgety? Let's see if I can make this work. Here. There it is. Click the bell, choose all notifications. And I also want to thank our Facebook subscribers for supporting the channel. Super nice of you. Paul Anderson was modding too. Hopefully I thanked Paul. But Eve Richards, Lou Green, Sharon Klazen Goslin, Kay Larry Body, Margaret Riley, Robert Real II, and all of our other Facebook subscribers. I really appreciate it. And our Twitch subscribers, thanks for supporting the channel as well. Jack's Animals, I Got That Fire. Just to name a few. Gina Pina. Beautiful Profanity, Massachusetts Guy, Matthew Kohai 3, Chi-Town Zeke. Hold on. I think it's Chi-Town Zeke. Did I get it? Factory Rejects MX. Simp Nasty Scrimp, The Sugaro, thanks for subscribing. Big Ball of Yarn, Rival Killa. All of the new subscribers over there like Piffa-P, Tussmaster, 420 Prince, LB Prairie Dawn, Burge 56, Notorious Rob. Thank you for your support on Twitch and for subscribing to the channel. And also our YouTube members such as Captain Jerry Donnelly, Evelyn in Maine, Roger Shoemaker, Faux Arc, Jesse's Girl, Anton Smith, Joe Hart, PhD, Bluesy Girl, Jesse's Girl, NJ Prepper, JK Cinar, Cyan Doodles, Rich Mix, NY Committee, The One and Only. Thank you all of our YouTube members, CAC 813, and all of our other members too. Thank you. Spiritually You, Icy Bird, and others. All right, so I am going to wrap up this broadcast. Thank you again for joining the coverage. Thanks to everybody else for watching, like George Jimenez, Paul Serrano, Christy Claft, Mike Fallon, Twiggy, K. Fortune McNeil, Peachy Keen, D. Schmidt, Tracy Williams, Dennis McNeely, and others. Marjorie Jones, thanks for subscribing to Marjorie, and thank you, Jeremy Freeman, for your support. Anything about the jet fuel in the water? I haven't specifically heard about that. There might be stuff about it. Maybe if we cover this later, if you ask again, maybe I can find out something about it. I didn't read anything about it today, but there could be issues with it. I do not know. Let me just do a quick check here. But the big next thing I'm waiting for is the NTSB press conference, and I don't know when that's going to be. All right. So we will be covering this more. We were up all night covering it, but just really tragic. As I know most of you know, an American Airlines plane carrying 64 people total was coming into land at Ronald Reagan National Airport in Washington D.C. when it collided with an Army Black Hawk helicopter with 3 soldiers on board and no survivors. So, condolences again to all of the families of those on board. Just terrible, and we will see where the investigation goes with this. But that is our broadcast for now. I appreciate you joining me for the Trump press briefing, and we will see you soon with more live breaking news coverage right here at Agenda Free TV.